His voice pulses through Biggie's Ready to Die. His groove anchors 3-6 Mafia's biggest hits. Kendrick Lamar built anthems on his foundation, yet when hip-hop celebrates its heroes, his name gets buried in the fine print. This is the story of Willie Hutch, the Motown architect whose genius shaped a generation of legends while he faded into the shadows. Before the world knew Notorious B.I.G. or bumped UGK in their rides, they were unknowingly vibing to Willie Hutch. His fingerprints are on everything from Jackson 5 classics to the hardest street anthems ever recorded. But while others climbed to superstardom, the man behind the sound remained invisible. How does one of music's most gifted minds become the industry's best-kept secret? It all started with a desperate phone call that changed music history forever. Picture this. It's 1970, past midnight in Los Angeles. Hal Davis, one of Motown's top producers, is in full panic mode. The Jackson 5 are scheduled to record a new track the next morning, but Berry Gordy hates the lyrics. The backing track is fire, the production is tight, but the words are missing that special something that makes people stop everything and listen. Davis has one option left. He dials Willie Hutch, a young songwriter who's been quietly building a reputation around L.A. Most writers would have choked under that pressure. Not Willie. He answered that phone like his life depended on it, and in many ways, it did. While the rest of the world slept, Hutch stayed up all night crafting words that would become legendary. By 8 a.m., he walked into that Motown studio with lyrics that Berry Gordy couldn't refuse. The song was I'll Be There. Not just any hit, but Motown's biggest-selling single up to that point. 12-year-old Michael Jackson's voice soared over Willie's words, reaching number one on both pop and R&B charts. The track didn't just climb the charts, it lived there. And just like that, Willie Hutch went from regional songwriter to Motown's most trusted creative mind. Berry Gordy signed him immediately, not just as a writer, but as a staff producer, arranger, and musician. Hutch had proven he could deliver under impossible pressure, and Motown needed that kind of reliability, but this overnight success story had roots that ran much deeper than one magical night. Willie McKinley Hutchison was born December 6, 1944, in Los Angeles, but his real education happened in Dallas, Texas. After his parents divorced when he was young, his grandmother raised him in a world where music wasn't just entertainment, it was survival. The gospel churches, the street corner harmonies, the doo-wop groups, they all shaped his understanding of how music could move people. At Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, Willie formed The Ambassadors, a doo-wop group where he wasn't just the voice, he was the creative engine, writing songs, arranging vocals, crafting harmonies that could make grown men cry. His classmates saw talent, but Willie saw something bigger. He wanted to control every aspect of the sound from the first note to the final mix. After high school came 2 years in the U.S. Marines, a detail most people don't know about Willie's story. Military service gave him discipline, structure, and a work ethic that would serve him for decades. When he returned to Los Angeles in 1964, he was focused, hungry, and ready to build something lasting. His debut single, Love Has Put Me Down, on Soul City Records, didn't set the world on fire, but it caught the right ears. The Fifth Dimension, that smooth pop-soul quintet, started recording his songs. Willie wasn't just writing for them, he was shaping their entire sound. His work on their album, Up, Up, and Away, showed the industry that this young man from Dallas could craft hits for different audiences, different vibes, different worlds. But it was that midnight call from Hal Davis that launched Willie into Motown's inner circle, where the real magic happened. Inside the walls of Hitsville, USA, Willie Hutch became the ultimate utility player. Berry Gordy didn't just see a songwriter, he saw a musical architect who could build whatever the moment demanded. Need a silky ballad for Diana Ross? Willie's got you. Want a gritty groove for Junior Walker? Willie's your man. looking for the perfect arrangement to make Smokey Robinson's solo career take off. Willie could craft that, too. His versatility was both his greatest asset and his biggest curse. While other Motown artists became known for their signature sound, Willie was the chameleon who could shapeshift between genres without missing a beat. He produced Smokey Robinson's first album without the miracles. He co-arranged vocals on Jackson 5 classics like Got to Be There and Never Can Say Goodbye. His pen touched songs for Marvin Gaye, The Miracles, and countless others. But here's where the story gets complicated. Willie was essential to Motown's success, but he was never the face of it. His name lived in the liner notes, buried in the credits while other artists took center stage. He was building the foundation while everyone else got to live in the house. That might have bothered some artists, but Willie had bigger plans brewing. In 1973, everything changed when Willie stepped out from behind the curtain and into a world where his vision could run wild. The opportunity came through The Mac, a gritty blaxploitation film starring Richard Pryor and Max Julien. This wasn't your polished Motown production. This was raw street cinema that needed a soundtrack with edge, soul, and authenticity. Willie didn't just write songs for The Mac. He scored the entire emotional landscape. Brothers Gonna Work It Out wasn't just a track, it was a manifesto. Over rolling bass lines and cinematic strings, Willie declared survival, struggle, and hope in a world designed to break black men. The song hit different in the neighborhoods, in the barbershops, in the streets where people lived the reality he was singing about. Then came Slick, a swaggering jazz fusion instrumental that followed the main character's rise to power. Willie wasn't just providing background music, he was scoring characters. You could hear Goldie's ambition in the horns, his paranoia in the strings, his pain in the pauses between beats. The Mac soundtrack became legendary, standing alongside Curtis Mayfield's Superfly and Isaac Hayes' Shaft as one of the greatest blaxploitation soundtracks ever created. The difference? While Curtis and Isaac became household names, Willie Hutch remained in the shadows, but Willie kept pushing. In 1974, he scored Foxy Brown, the Pam Grier revenge thriller that redefined what strong black women could look like on screen. With tracks like Give Me Some of That Good Old Love and the theme of Foxy Brown, Willie created music that was both sensual and revolutionary, street smart and sophisticated. These soundtracks weren't just movie music, they were cultural statements. Willie understood the politics of survival, the coded language of the streets, and the power of music to speak truth to power. Every note carried weight, every lyric was intentional. What makes this story tragic is how the mainstream media treated Willie's breakthrough moment. The actors got the headlines, the directors got the credit, but the man who gave these films their heartbeat remained invisible. Even when his music was clearly driving the cultural conversation, Willie Hutch the man stayed in the background. But here's where the story gets interesting. Decades later, hip-hop discovered Willie Hutch's catalog and turned him into one of the most sampled artists in the genre's history. The Notorious B.I.G. built Ready to Die on Willie's hospital prelude of Love Theme from the Foxy Brown soundtrack. That haunting melody became the foundation for one of hip-hop's most important albums. UGK flipped Brothers Gonna Work It Out into Southern rap gold. 3-6 Mafia turned Willie's grooves into Memphis Street anthems. Dr. Dre chopped up Willie's work for The Chronic. Kendrick Lamar, Big K.R.I.T., and countless others built careers sampling Willie Hutch's genius. And here's a detail that'll blow your mind. Willie Hutch was the uncle of Cold 187, from Above the Law, one of the pioneering West Coast rap groups. Hip-hop was literally in his family, but even that connection couldn't bring his name into the spotlight where it belonged. The cruel irony is that Willie became everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. His voice sang in the background of cultural landmarks, but his face was missing from the frame. Producers knew his catalog like the Bible, but casual fans had never heard his name. He was the spirit of a movement without being recognized as its architect. DJs and producers treated Willie's catalog like a gold mine. digging through his lush arrangements, hard drums, and emotional vocals to find the perfect sample. His music added depth and authenticity to a generation raised on samplers and MPCs, but for all that usage, his name was rarely mentioned in acceptance speeches or album credits. The sampling phenomenon revealed something important about Willie's artistry. His music wasn't just catchy, it was emotionally complex. Producers weren't just borrowing his beats, they were borrowing his ability to capture pain, hope, struggle, and triumph in a single groove. Willie had mastered the art of making music that felt both timeless and immediate, both nostalgic and futuristic. But the industry that profited from his genius rarely acknowledged the source. It's one thing to be forgotten, it's another to be actively used while being actively ignored. Willie's legacy lived in the beats that shook clubs and cars across the nation, but his story was nowhere to be found. By the late 1970s, Willie was getting frustrated with Motown's limitations. He wanted more creative control, more freedom to explore different sounds, more recognition for his contributions. In 1977, he left Motown for Norman Whitfield Records, hoping to find the artistic freedom he'd been craving. At Whitfield, Willie released In Tune in 1978, a funk-heavy album that pulsed with gritty bass lines and defiant energy. Tracks like Let Me Be the One Baby and All-American Funkathon weren't designed to climb the pop charts. They were designed to move bodies and speak to souls. But once again, the industry didn't know what to do with Willie's versatility. Radio programmers want artists who stayed in their lane. Labels wanted formulaic hits. And Willie, whose music carried themes of empowerment, protest, and complexity, refused to flatten himself to fit someone else's mold. He was too soulful for funk radio, too funky for Quiet Storm, too real for pop crossover. Behind closed doors, Willie was becoming increasingly frustrated with the business side of music. The same industry that celebrated his writing and production skills seemed allergic to promoting Willie Hutch, the artist. It was as if his genius was valued, but his identity was expendable. The music industry has always struggled with artists who can't be easily categorized, and Willie was the ultimate category breaker. His voice didn't soar like Al Green's or smolder like Teddy Pendergrass's. Instead, it was gravel and velvet, honesty and ache. He sang like a man who'd seen too much, but still believed in possibility. In an industry obsessed with image and perfection, Willie's raw authenticity was often misunderstood. He wasn't selling fantasy, he was selling truth. And truth, as any artist will tell you, is harder to market than escapism. Despite the commercial challenges, Willie never compromised his artistic vision. He returned to Motown in 1982, where he scored a disco hit with In and Out and contributed songs to The Last Dragon soundtrack, including The Glow. But even these successes felt like small victories in a career that deserved much bigger recognition. The 1990s brought a new kind of heartbreak. For Willie Hutch, hip-hop had fully exploded into mainstream culture, and producers were making millions sampling the very songs Willie had crafted decades earlier. Yet Willie remained on the sidelines of his own legacy, watching younger artists build empires on foundations he had laid. In 1994, Willie moved back to Dallas, the city where his musical journey had begun. Away from the spotlight, away from the industry politics, back to the place where music felt pure and honest. He continued to write, continued to mentor young artists, but the major label machine had moved on without him. His 1994 album, The Mac Is Back, was both a declaration and a plea for recognition. Willie wanted people to know he was still here, still capable of crafting grooves that could move hearts and shake rooms. The album blended his signature soul with updated production, showing that experience had only deepened his artistry. But the music press barely noticed. No major magazine features, no late-night TV performances, just another release that disappeared into the void. It was as if the industry had collectively decided that Willie Hutch's moment had passed, even though his influence was more relevant than ever. In 2002, at age 57, Willie released Sexalicious, his final studio album. The title was playful, but the music still carried that emotional weight that had always defined his work. His voice, seasoned with decades of experience, remained as compelling as ever. But by then, the industry had stopped listening to voices like Willie's. The tragic irony is that while Willie was being ignored by the mainstream, his music was generating comfortable royalty income from all those hip-hop samples. He was financially secure, but culturally invisible. A strange kind of success that probably felt more like punishment than reward. On September 19, 2005, Willie Hutch died in Dallas at the age of 60. The cause of death was never publicly disclosed, adding one final layer of mystery to a career full of unanswered questions. There were no major headlines, no tribute concerts, no waves of public mourning from the industry he had helped build. Just a quiet exit for a man who had given so much to American music. A few brief mentions in trade magazines, some posts on soul music forums, and then silence. Even in death, Willie remained a ghost to the mainstream. But those who knew, those who really understood music history, felt the loss deeply. Because Willie Hutch wasn't just a soul singer or a producer or a soundtrack composer. He was a cultural architect who had given sound to an entire generation's struggle and joy. 2 years after his death, in 2007, the industry finally remembered Willie Hutch. A tribute concert was held at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, featuring performances from artists who understood his importance. Proceeds went to his old high school, Booker T. Washington High School, for the Performing and Visual Arts, and the American Society of Young Musicians. It was a beautiful gesture, but it also felt like too little, too late. Where was this recognition when Willie was alive and still creating? Where were these tributes when he needed industry support the most? The real tragedy isn't just that Willie Hutch died relatively unknown, it's that his invisibility robbed generations of music fans from knowing the man behind the sounds they loved. How many people bumped "Brother's Gonna Work It Out" without ever wondering who Willie Hutch was? How many hip-hop fans celebrated samples without understanding the genius who created the original? Today, Willie Hutch's legacy lives in a strange space between everywhere and nowhere. His music pulses through modern soundscapes, sampled by everyone from Drake to Kendrick Lamar. His songs appear in movie soundtracks like Hustle and Flow and Four Brothers. His influence shapes the sound of contemporary R&B and hip-hop production. Yet his name remains absent from most conversations about music history. He's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He doesn't have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The industry that built fortunes on his creativity never gave him the recognition he earned. But here's what the industry can't take away. Willie Hutch's music refuses to die. Every time a producer digs through vinyl crates looking for that perfect sample, they find Willie. Every time a young artist discovers the emotional depth possible in soul music, they find Willie. Every time someone needs music that speaks to struggle, survival, and hope, they find Willie Hutch. His catalog represents something the modern music industry has lost: the ability to create songs that are both commercially viable and emotionally authentic. Willie never had to choose between making hits and making art, because he understood that the best music does both simultaneously. The sampling culture that emerged in hip-hop proved Willie's genius in a way that mainstream success never could. Producers don't sample weak music. They don't build classics on shaky foundations. The fact that Willie's work became the bedrock for so many important hip-hop tracks proves that his artistry was built to last. But recognition shouldn't have to wait for posthumous discovery. Willie Hutch deserved his flowers while he was alive to smell them. He deserved to see the impact his music was having on new generations. He deserved to know that his vision, his voice, his creativity had shaped the sound of American popular music. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we owe Willie Hutch now? We owe him our recognition. We owe him our respect. We owe him our memory. Most importantly, we owe him the truth about his contributions to music history. Willie Hutch was more than just a songwriter or producer. He was the sound of black resilience, the voice of urban struggle, the groove that kept communities moving through impossible circumstances. His music provided the soundtrack for both celebration and survival, often in the same song. The industry might have forgotten Willie Hutch, but we don't have to. Every time we play his music, every time we share his story, every time we give credit where credit is due, we keep his legacy alive in ways that matter more than any award or accolade. Because at the end of the day, Willie Hutch didn't create music for the industry. He created music for the people. And the people, if they know the story, will never let his genius fade into silence again. So here's the challenge. Go find a Willie Hutch song you've never heard before. Listen to the layers, the emotion, the craftsmanship. Then remember that this same man wrote some of the biggest hits in Motown history, scored iconic films, and provided the foundation for countless hip-hop classics. Willie Hutch deserves to be remembered not as a footnote in music history, but as one of its most essential architects, the genius behind the sound, the man who gave voice to a generation's dreams and struggles, the artist who proved that great music doesn't need recognition to be great, but recognition makes the music even more powerful. What's your favorite Willie Hutch song or sample? Drop it in the comments, and let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to like this video if you learned something new about this incredible artist, and subscribe for more stories about the legends they want you to forget.